Look at that. Technology savvy. Uh, Afton, is Travis with you, or is he in mobile, or is he en route?
Now he's with me. He's currently looking for rope because we're doing knots.
Oh, got it. Got it. All right, good. Very good. I was doing a little bit of additional research on videos and stuff. And there's so many really good ones out there. These guys that are testing not only ropes and slings, versus knots and sewn stuff, and then the performances on knots. And it's kind of fascinating. It really is. I mean, some of these knots fail, but they fail at such high numbers that I'm not sure if it's really a failure. So, I mean, it's really kind of fascinating. And then there's other ones that, like this knot right here that I have up, which is basically just a figure eight.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears pretty well dressed. You don't have a whole lot of runs crossing over each other.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how when they test the figure eights, when they finally do fail, they are undressed. They do start crossing over each other, and so they're trying to. I think their part of their argument was, does it really matter how well dressed they are to start out, because they're gonna undress themselves as they fail anyway. So I thought, wow, that's kind of fascinating. And then they're talking about how much stronger you could make these when you do something with the tails and things like that, or not. But so it's kind of interesting.
That's crazy that it would undress itself.
Yeah,
in the
yeah, and
yeah.
And I'll tell a little story before we get started. I was telling Sydney on the way. I gave him a ride home last night and was talking to him about knots and so forth. And being an older climber, I and maybe just being an old guy anyway, when they've been sewn slings have been out for a long time, and for the longest time I fought the idea of a sewn sling being tighter than or stronger than hey, there's Liam. I fought the whole idea of a sewn sling being stronger than a knotted sling. And my theory behind that was not every strand is going to be caught in the stitches of a sewn sleeve. So I thought you're losing some of the strength of some of the strands, but because all of those strands are going to be caught up in the knots, they're going to be all involved in the knot. Well, come to find out, the knot itself, that shape of the knot, is what weakens the roper or webbing. And so once I started seeing the testing, that it's not really so much the material that's failing, it's the knot that's failing. That was just kind of an eye-opening thing. And I was able to evolve as an old climber. I was like, oh, okay. Now I kind of, that side of it kind of makes. So sometimes these things take a little getting used to and accustomed to, and things that work for you. I mean, a lot of times we don't want to fix things that are working for you, but yet if it's something that we can make better by making that, we can do that. Yeah, Kyle, did you have a question?
I was just kind of thinking, I mean, especially looking at the knot ahead, a figure eight has a natural way where if one part of a rope is, because you're talking about individual strands in the rope, but I'm thinking every time a rope curves, the inside of that curve is going to be a little bit slack and the outside is going to be a little bit tight. It's kind of like when you go around a curve in your car, the tires on the outside are traveling a longer distance and the tires on the inside of your car. And so even with what you're saying, not all the strands are under equal tension either. And so it's not like that's going to cause the rope to snap, but it's either way, you are always going to have an imperfect system where some strands are a little more stressed than others.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a very good observation. And I think you're accurate on that too. I was actually looking at one of the videos. I really wanted to kind of incorporate it into the meet today, but I already had one and it's kind of long already, and so we just really didn't have the time. But they were testing, and we have them at the shop. The Mammut, as oh my gosh, I'm gonna get the name wrong now. I want to say Dyneema, but they're really small slings. They're really thin, and he had some that were slightly used that he had out. He took out of his climbing bag. He had some brand new ones, and they were testing them, at their breaking strength. And obviously, the brand new ones, scored really high, but not a single one of them broke in the stitching. They were all and they were usually where they go around a carabiner, because they film these things when they pop, and they film them really in slow motion, so you can not only see them breaking, but you can see where they're breaking under tension. And they were almost all, some of them would be right in the middle of the strands, but most of them were where they bent around the carabiner too. So that would be kind of what you were talking about too, Kyle, about, it's going to bend through a carabiner. The outside of those strands are going to be a heavier tension than the inside, and thus not quite as strong. So very good. Very good. All right. So let's see. So moving on into this a little bit, got a little bit on just talking about, how to tie into your climbing harness. Just a little blurb in here, REI expert advice video. We'll just play that real quick.
What's up? I'm Miranda with REI. One of the first things you're gonna have to learn if you're climbing is how to tie into your harness using a figure 8 follow through. So I'm gonna show you how to do that today. So the first thing I have to do before I start feeding the rope through my harness is tie a figure 8. I'm gonna do that by taking the loose end of the rope and pulling out about an arm's length plus a shoulder of rope here. And then I'm gonna make a loop like this. Then I'm going to take this loose end of the rope and wrap it around the back, come to the front, and go through. And that's our figure 8. One of the most common mistakes is that people will not wrap the rope around fully, and they'll just come through the front here, and then you wind up with an overhand knot. One easy way to remember how to tie your figure 8 is to say to yourself, make a ghost, strangle the ghost, and poke him in the eye. And there's our figure 8. Now that I have the figure 8, I'm going to go ahead and tie into my harness. So I'll take the loose strand of rope and feed it up through both hard points, or these 2 loops on my harness. Some harnesses will only have one hard point, but most harnesses are going to have both, so you want to make sure you feed through those. Then I'm going to go ahead and follow along these train tracks, so to speak, on the figure 8. So I'll take the loose end of rope, go up through here, and then I'm going to go along the back, and then keep following this under both here, then around the back, down through here, and up through the rope. So now that I have my knot tied, I need to go ahead and dress it, or tighten it down close to my harness to make it look pretty and clean. We do this just so that you can easily see the pairs, and also because it'll be a lot easier to untie after you've been sitting in the harness for a while. So now that I have the knot tied, I want to make sure that I have at least 6 inches of tail on my rope. So I have much more than that, but an easy way to check is to take a flat palm, put it close to the followed back figure 8 with your thumb up, and then you want to make sure that you have at least enough rope for that distance. If you have too much, like I do here, you can always tie a stopper knot, and it's just to use excess rope. You'll do this by wrapping around the front of your standing rope twice, and then coming up through the bottom. This is not a safety knot, it is a stopper knot. So as long as you have 6 inches of tail, you won't need to do this, but if you have too much, you can always do that. Now that I have my knot tied, I'm going to do a quick check on it. So I'm looking to make sure that the rope goes through both hard points on my harness, which it does. And then I'm looking for 5 pairs of rope going up towards the standing rope. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And then I have a stopper knot or 6 inches of tail. I'm all set to go. Now, no video can replace the experience of having an expert teach you how to tie into your harness. So we'd recommend finding an experienced climbing buddy to teach you how to do this, or taking a class with your local REI. And always have someone experienced check your knot before you begin climbing on it. If you want more information about climbing, you can check out our other videos. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. That's it, and we'll see you out there.
So kind of just in a review, sort of, this is another way of also tying in a figure 8. She was doing it where you're actually tying into your harness. If you're doing a figure 8 on a bite, is basically tying one figure 8, but out of a loop. So you're actually tying both strands at the same time. As you can kind of see there, the loop is, instead of just an end going through and creating a figure 8, you've got a loop going through and creating a figure 8 and completing, the 2-strand run all the way through it. And that bottom one, I'm kind of questioning it as far as being dressed, because if you flipped it over, I have a feeling it would be crossed. The strands going over, or the runs going over on the far left, look like they're crossing right out of the gate, and then looks like there might be some, but that's being kind of overcritical at this point.
Dave, I'd agree with you on that cross. Can I make one comment about her video?
Yeah.
The reason that you dress the knot close to your harness, or one of the reasons you dress the knot close to your harness, is that you're not leaving extra loops, tails, anything that can be misinterpreted as a place to clip into. So like, you just don't want extra rope or anything like that. You want it as close to you to be as neat as possible. She said to look prettier, this is good. But the idea that you're not going to clip a carabiner into that loop because you think it's something to clip into, or hook another device off of it. That's the premise of it. So you don't cross-load your knot.
Yeah, and then when you're climbing, you don't want that kind of that saggy thing down there that could be, get caught in a crack or something, stop you in your tracks. That's kind of voice of experience talking there. It's happened, and a nice tidy knot that's close to you is going to ultimately help you. And like you were saying too, doesn't give you that false, I can just, here's someplace I can clip into real quick just to, I can hang a sling off that, or a quick draw or something. Yeah, you want to try to avoid, there's other places that are better for that. So yeah, good point. Very good point. Welcome, by the way, Travis. Good morning. And here's a talk about just a few more other knots that you're going to find.
What's up? I'm Miranda with REI, and today I'm going to talk about my 5 most commonly used knots for climbing. Now, I'm not going to talk about the figure 8 follow through that I use to tie into a harness. We have a whole separate video on that, but these are the 5 knots that I use most commonly. So the first knot is not a knot at all, it's actually a hitch. And this is the clove hitch. Clove hitch is most commonly used when you want to go direct into an anchor, as it's easy to do and it's easy to take out. So there's 2 different ways of tying the clove hitch, and the first is going to use 2 hands. This is the most common way. So I'll go ahead and take my right hand and cross the rope over the rope in my left hand. And I'm going to do that again, the same direction. And then I'll take this second loop and pass it underneath the first loop. From there, I'll take my carabiner and clip it through both of the loops. And I'm just going to go ahead and tighten everything down to tighten up the hitch. And from here, you can see that if I pull on this side, it's not going to come loose. Pull on this side, it's not going to come loose. So that is the clove hitch. So the next knot is the figure 8 on a bite. Figure 8 follow through is used to tie yourself into a harness, and then the figure 8 on the bite is great if you need to tie into the middle of the rope, or I also use it when I'm cleaning an anchor and I'm going to lower from the anchor. So to tie the figure 8 on a bite, you'll take out a bite of rope or a loop of rope like this. Then you're going to tie it just like you do a figure 8 when you're tying in. You will make a ghost, you will choke the ghost, and then poke him in the eye. There's your figure 8 on a bite. So the next knot is the barrel knot. So this is often used to tie at the end of your rope so that the rope won't pass through the belay device as you are rappelling or belaying someone. And an easy way to tie this is on your palm. So I'll take the loose end of rope here and wrap it over my palm. And then I'm going to take that end and go back towards my thumb once, back towards my thumb twice, and then take this end of rope and thread it through all 3 loops on my hand towards my fingers. Then I can slide my hand out and pull it tight. And that's the barrel knot. The next knot is the double fisherman's. So you might be familiar with the double fisherman's as a stopper knot when you're tying into your harness after you've done the figure 8, but it can also be used to join a strand of cord into a loop. So now we're going to show you how to tie the double fisherman's. So to use the double fisherman's to join your cord in a loop, you'll first want to start with both ends of the rope facing opposite directions. So an easy way to do this is to hold one end of the cord in your hand like this, and then you'll take the other end and you'll wrap it around your thumb and the standing cord. Go ahead and make an X, and then take that loose end of rope and pass it through both loops and pull it tight. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So we'll hold on to that cord, take the loose end, wrap it around your thumb and the standing end, wrap it around again to make an X, and then go ahead and pass the loose end of the cord through both loops. And then when you go ahead and pull this tight, you should have a neat knot for 2 double fishermen's, 4 ropes in a line. And that's the double fishermen's. So the last knot is the prusik hitch. The prusik hitch is a friction hitch, which means that it slides when there's no weight on it, and then it will not slide when you weight it. This is most often used as a backup to a rappel or a belay. So to tie the prusik hitch, you'll take your loop of cord that you made with your double fisherman's, and I'm going to take the knot in one hand, just slightly offset, and then pass the other end of the rope, or other end of the cord, underneath my rope in this instance. And we'll take this knot and we'll pass it through this loop, and we're going to do that probably like 2 or 3 more times. From here, I'll take this joiner knot and pass it through this loop that we passed underneath our rope, and then we're going to go ahead and dress this hitch, basically tighten it down, make sure that it looks clean. There we go. That is the prusik hitch. The prusik hitch is cool because it will slide on the rope when there's no weight on it, but then if you put weight on it, it's not going to move in either direction. If you're using cords that are of really different diameters, you're going to get more bite into the rope, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. And it's a good idea when you tie this knot to offset your joiner knot just a little bit so that you don't have your carabiner or your point of weight sitting directly on that knot. And that is the prusik hitch. That's it for my 5 most commonly used climbing knots. Check out our other videos, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you out there.
Now this one was, I used to use it a lot when I was tying my own slings. You would, for tying webbing, tended to work really well for that. But you could kind of see basically it's almost like the tie-in tie through with a figure 8, but you're basically just doing an overhand knot and then following back in through itself and tying off. Yeah, I think this is a better knot for webbing than it is for with a rope or Furlong or whatever. One of the things that in the video she was talking about on the prusik having, you know, a smaller stranded or a smaller diameter rope as your prusik than say your climbing rope or whatever. I think once you start getting bigger diameter, and I was actually always told that it had to be smaller. I mean, if it was the same size or bigger, it wouldn't work. And that kind of makes sense too. The smaller diameter, it's not something that you're going to want to take a lead fall on. So it's not going to really have to support an amazing amount of weight. But, you know, if you get something, say, like if you're on a, 10 millimeter, lead rope and you tie into with a number 6 or number 7 millimeter, you're probably going to be, in really good shape with that. Probably going to work really well. But but the water knot, I think, works like you said, mostly probably better with webbing. Do you have something, Travis? I thought I heard a cue in there.
A cue. So I have something on everything, so I can't help it.
That's why I keep sending you invites, Travis.
Rope is plastic as much as it is, and plastic melts really easy, and that's the whole premise of a not need tying. That used to be a saying that people would say. It's not that good, but just what they would say. Yeah. But when you cross load or not, or if you ever do a rope test of when rope strength breaks, it's at the knot. Because if Afton was to hold this side of the rope and I was to hold this side of the rope and make it into a loop and just start going back and forth with it, I'd cut through the rope in about maybe 10 seconds, just from the heat of you getting the friction on it. So tying your knots appropriately and doing it well makes the knot much, much stronger. But the weakest part of your rope is where your knot is where your knot is. Yeah, that made sense. And I think that's something that people don't understand when they tie a crappily tied knot. You look at it, you're like, I don't want to climb with you, buddy, because it's just not a safe way to do it.
No, it's proven. It definitely is proven too. Here's another example in the prusik. There you go. Again, a smaller diameter rope going around a larger diameter rope should work pretty well. This one is hey, there we go. Double grapevine. This one takes a little bit of time to get used to, and you can easily tie this backwards. And what ends up happening is you don't get this really nice, if you can see my cursor, you don't get this really nice joining point right here. If you tie one of these backwards, you can see it doesn't sit right. And so, again, that's voice of experience going there. I always test that. And it's like, okay, yeah, they're mating up really well. And that looks like it's going to be in good shape. And here, this is kind of the water knot on webbing, as I was mentioning before, just kind of following yourself through, and just want to make sure that you don't have a lot of twists in that, and it's not going all over the place. It's going to help with all that. Here's another example of the double grapevine or fisherman's knot. I'm kind of screaming through these because I've got a couple videos on the and here's an example of all different types of contraptions and situations where you might use various knots, gear, hauling, weighting, and just whether it's slings or what have you. This one is going to be on mostly just kind of the ropes, kind of like you were saying, Travis, plastics, and kind of what's involved in these ropes. So you kind of see what all this is going to be holding for you. So let me, we'll go ahead and just play this and. Sorry about the sound on that. It's kind of
As self-described gear
Backing
geeks
out
here at
there.
Weigh My Rack, we love learning about how gear gets developed and made. So when we were invited to Edelrid and offered unrestricted access to the rope-making factory, we were psyched. It turns out, climbing ropes are made today using the same basic design and material as the original dynamic Kernmantle rope released in 1964 by Edelrid. But modern ropes perform much, much better than those in past decades, which leads to the looming question. If ropes have been made using the same material and construction for the last 60 years, how do manufacturers continue to improve performance?
All rope manufacturers nearly buy the same raw material, but the output is a totally different rope. That just shows that manufacturing and process has a big influence on quality. Due to process control, there had been big improvements made. 10 years ago, we could also do a 9mm rope, but this 9mm rope was only maybe with, let's say, 28 to 32% sheet proportion, and now we can do an 8.6 millimeter rope with 45% sheet proportion. This is only possible due to process control, I would say. Maybe some of the raw material had been slightly improved, but due to the fact that we can tweak as well as have our processes designed by ourselves, we can change the characteristics of raw materials. Even though the raw material has not changed too much, we can do a much better rope. Lighter rope, more robust rope, abrasion-resistant rope.
We asked Edelrid to walk us through each step of the process and explain how each step influences the performance of the final product. The first step is raw material sourcing. Every modern climbing rope is made using nylon, also known as polyamide, for both the sheath and the core. For ropes, this plastic is melted, extruded, and drawn into ultra-thin filaments. These filaments are then combined to form yarn, which is the raw material for making ropes. After the yarn arrives at Edelrid, they get twisted together.
So the first step would be the twisting of the yarn. For the core yarn, it's a double twisted yarn, so we get that already twisted.
This twist does give the yarn a certain dynamic because it's acting like a spring, and on the other hand, it combines different single fibers, and therefore the abrasion resistance is getting much higher. There's different twisting possible. We can twist 2 layers, 3, 4, up to 5, depending on what you want to achieve with rope construction. Which kind of twisted sheet yarns you put on a rope really depends on the concept of the rope. It's always a combination of how is the inner made, what is the sheet looking like, on which machinery, and how is the machinery running in order to achieve the best output of the rope.
During the twisting process, half of the yarn must be twisted to the right and half twisted to the left. If all of the yarn is twisted the same direction, the rope will naturally curl and kink. Edelrid twists their yarn between 100 and 140 times per meter. After the yarn is twisted, it goes into the autoclave to be shrunk. But for this step, it must be taken off the spools and loosely knit to ensure that every fiber is affected equally.
We have to get a very loose bundle of yarn, because if we just would do it on a whole spool, you would not have the same shrinkage on the outer layers as well as on the inner layers. So one of the huge steps is shrinking the material, and we do shrink the core material, the sheet material for sure, otherwise it would not work
you guys
together.
getting any sound
One
out of that?
Major aspect is to get dynamic into the material.
So what we want to achieve in the autoclave, in the shrinking process, is we want to shrink the fibers in a certain way.
Are you guys getting any sound
Sounds
out of
coming
that,
out,
Travis?
yeah.
Am I not getting any sound out of this now? Sorry, everybody. Are you able to hear me? Actually,
I hear you. I hear the video as well.
Yeah, I can hear both.
great. All right, I'll go back to it. For some reason, I stopped hearing everybody. So, all right, we'll get back into this. I'm just gonna leave it on this screen. Okay.
It performs in the best way for the rope. This means we have different shrinking programs, obviously depending on the raw material and the rope construction.
We have the temperature going up, steam comes in, then it's going to shrink, then just hold it for 8 minutes, go down, go hotter, cool down, and this is like pressure, humidity, temperature, how it goes up, how it comes down. There's like 5 factors with some chemicals involved sometimes. And if you see we have only 2 or 3 raw materials, but 50 programs means you can tweak the raw material to be specific for a certain product.
The shrinkage process is one of the most important processes in order to make a good rope. The yarns from the sheath as well as from the inner will be shrinked up to 30%.
After being removed from the autoclave, the sheath fibers must be de-knit and put back onto bobbins. These bobbins are placed into bins until they're ready to go into the braiding machine.
So we work with 2 kind of different inners here. One is the twisted core and one is the braided core. The twisted core can be more dynamic, a little stiffer, a little less or more twisted. So we have basically a raw material and then we create different twisting for the inners accordingly to the specifications of the rope.
At this stage, the core fibers are sent through a full bath to coat the core in its water-repellent finish. The sheath will receive its water-repellent finish treatment after the rope is braided. During the braiding process, there are 5 main variables that affect the final rope. The first is the number of bobbins on the machine.
Yet now in the dynamic rope, there's 2 main machines we're working with. This is the 40 carrier and the 48 carrier. The carrier in this case means how many bobbins can be put on a machine. And the 48 obviously has 8 bobbins more than a 40er. And this creates a little flatter surface of the rope. We can create the same diameter with a 40 or 48 carrier. But on the 48 carrier, we make the single sheet yarns thinner. And this way, the percentage as well as the weight of the sheet actually on the same diameter of rope, even though it's made with a different carrier, is the same. It's mostly about how thick the yarn is and what kind of surface it creates on the rope.
Then they must determine the ideal speed at which the rope is being pulled through the machine relative to how quickly the carriers are braiding. Next, they choose the tension of the yarns and the angle at which the fibers are being braided, as well as the diameter of the hole at which the rope is being pulled through. All of these factors get manipulated to achieve the desired characteristics of a given rope.
Normally we are producing roughly about 1,000 meters of a rope per production run. We do have a lot of knowledge in-house, how we can work on handling issues and stuff like that. So, for example, the dry treated rope will be produced different on the machinery. Normally, if the ropes are treated before treating them, they feel kind of stiff. They are produced a little stiffer. So if we're running it through the machinery, they are softening itself, they're relaxing. We know that we have to, with a non-treated Swift, for example, we have to adapt a few things on the braiding machineries so we get this touch even without running through the treatment. So if they come from the machinery, if they're going into the sports line, they are more or less finished. If they are in the pro line and they get the dry treatment, we have to put the dry treatment on. And before we are braiding rope, we have to treat the core yarn as well. So every single core yarn is treated, then we're producing the rope, and then we're treating the whole rope again. So only by doing this 2-time treatment process, we were able to fulfill the UAA standard. With the dynamic ropes, we are running every meter through the hands. So what we are looking about is issues concerning the touch. On braiding machinery, for example, can happen that the point where the yarns are braided together is just dropping down a little bit and just coming up again. So you will have a little piece of the rope which feels stiffer due to braided in a different braiding angle. It's not a safety relevant issue, but it is an issue where we say we don't want to have this coming to somebody buying an Edelrid rope. Those ladies working down there, they've got a lot of experience as well, and it's amazing which kind of small differences they are able to feel in rope, and we have not found a way to do this via machine.
After inspection, the ropes are sent through a machine that cuts the rope to the proper length and applies the middle mark. After the rope comes out of the machine, a person finishes the job by hand to make sure it's perfect. The rope terminations are then melted and taped. And finally, the rope is coiled and packaged for delivery.
All of you have bought a rope in your life where you had perfect handling in the beginning, and due to the lifespan, you have seen that the change of the rope was like dramatic, was getting too stiff and nearly impossible to handle, or seat slippage, or all kinds of weird stuff. So what we want to achieve in those processes is to combine the raw materials from the sheath as well as from the inner in a certain way that the materials worked in a perfect way together in the rope while braiding or after it had been braided. And this during the whole lifespan. And this is the big challenge and the art of braiding.
Doing this kind of stuff for more than 150 years now. It's a lot of knowledge, in-house knowledge we have, and thinking about what we ourselves can do to improve ropes or to improve sustainability with our project, just as an idea of what a good product is a huge motivation, I guess.
Join us for our next Inside Out episode, where we'll be exploring how Edelrid is reducing their environmental footprint of their products and their operations.
Kind of interesting stuff there. There's a lot of information that it kind of forget about what's all involved in when we just buy these chunks of rope and hey, I like the colors, I like the way that feels or the size and stuff. And you don't think about all the other factors that go into this thing. Yeah. So there was one more video and we're kind of running out of time. Sorry about that, everybody, running a little bit late. But this is on a little bit, and I'll try to maybe fast forward through some of this because it's probably not as pertinent, but I wanted to there's a little bit of information on testing of these knots and stuff that we're talking about.
Oh man, we tested 13 different types of knots, 3 times each, all just to find out they all break around 50% of the MBS. Got a lot of goodies in this one, including some bonus ones, of course, in this episode of How Not to Highline. Hi, I'm Ryan Jinks, and welcome to our new Slack Snap Lab. So I think that intro is funny because we did this test like 6 months ago when we were just building out this lab. And Carl Mitchell tied, labeled, and shipped all these knots and ropes to us, which is super helpful because sample prep is a huge part of brake tests. And I always have a dozen videos in the bank, which is how we're able to upload regularly. But I was going to, we have 39 samples plus some bonus ones, so that's like a lot to process, plus we were decorating. So I was going to come up with a nice conclusion for you guys. Never really got around to that because I researched the MBS of the rope, because that's relevant to the breaking strength of these knots, right? So I ended up going down a rabbit trail with these ropes. A 7mm Edelweiss rope, which is what is in the video you're about to see, is a 9.8 kilonewton MBS, or minimum breaking strength. Now this was super interesting because some of our samples, spoiler alert, was 9-ish kilonewtons, and knots usually reduce the strength of the MBS. So I looked up the Edelrid 7mm rope as well, which is exactly the same material, polyamide, nylon, same rope. It's the same rope, 7mm. So why does Edelrid say theirs is 14 kilonewtons? That's a 5 additional. That's more than 50% stronger than Edelweiss is claiming. So I emailed Edelrid and said, why is your rope 14 kilonewtons? So Edelrid responded with this: our Power Lock has a 14 kilonewton MBS because we make the best gear in the game. Technical data, it's made of polyamide nylon. Not sure why Edelweiss doesn't compare. Maybe ask them. All right. Well, I never got around to asking them because that's just a rabbit trail, and I'm clearly making progress here. And the crane, we just finished putting the new cable on there. So now we can start assembling the drop tower. Spoiler alert. Anyways, yeah, so MBS, that's literally the next video I'm going to film, is how that works and why it's not a number you can always rely on. Either way, you're probably not going to die if you use rated gear in any normal use. Please put in the comments below why you think there's a discrepancy between the two companies. I think one is using a diverter and the other one is maybe testing in knots, because there's no way we're getting full strength with the rope in this video that you're going to see. Anyways, I wish the MBS came with context. I wish gear companies would put out information for us to not have to trust them, but to, in these contexts, this is what it breaks at, so we can do our own research. I feel smart enough as an end user to deserve that information. But I digress. We're just testing knots in this video, so let's go back to it. Carl Mitchell was excited about these specific knots, and so he tied them in a straight line and in a bend or in a circle, so we can kind of compare. Now this is a lot of data, so you can go in the timestamps below to the knots you want to see, or just read the description on, we'll have everything in there so you don't have to watch them all break. But there's a little bit, it's interesting how they break, more than the fact that they all break super good enough, except two ends joined together with a butterfly. That was a good one. Anyways, a 6-month younger Ryan is now going to explain all the knots here on the floor, and then we'll get to breaking. Okay, here is a lot to go over. We have a Zeppelin loop. It's Zeppelin on both sides. Then you have a Zeppelin loop with a whip on it. You can see here, the whip holds the tail. Then butterfly loop is on both ends here. A figure 8 loop, which is what I am most familiar with the tail tied off. A Revere loop, never even heard of this one before. And here's some good old Bolins. If you are a Bolin nerd, because I know there's like 5 ways to tie this, then here you go. Maybe we can do a whole series on Bolins later. Loops is what you call bends. Apparently, I'm learning stuff here. Okay, so we are starting with the Zeppelin bend. That is a pretty neat looking knot. A Revere bend. Here you go. Wow. Butterfly bend. You have the Flemish. That is a figure 8. That is something I've tied a lot of and did not know is called a Flemish. Ooh, I know what this one is. It's a double fisherman's. That is something I do. And here we have a butterfly bend 2. And then you have the sheet bend, which I still have not mastered.
Broken the knot on the other side. See the end there. Zeppelin loop with a whip. Broken the knot, shocker. We got the same result as the first one we tested. Sample 1096, Zeppelin loop. Broke on this side. This overhand here, barrel knot that was here, has come untied. And then the one on this side, it looks like it just kept slipping through until it cut here. Same as the last test, we have those backups there, that overhand or barrel knot. Broken the knot, very similar to the last one. It pulled through this. This knot is still intact, though real tight. We've got a Zeppelin loop with those backup knots. Yeah, broke here, pulled through that backup knot. This is a butterfly loop, and it has the barrel knot backup overhand. So knot looks intact over here. Go check the other side. There's not much of a knot left here. That's most likely the backup knot there, and then what's left of the butterfly. Sample 1100, another butterfly loop. Broken the knot on this side, and as you can see, as on the last sample, it leaves us two nice little overhands there. One for the backup knot, barrel knot, and then that's part of the butterfly loop. This is the third butterfly loop sample. We had a failure on this side. This is a figure 8 loop, and he has these overhand backups. Looks like it broke on this side. This side's real tight. We're thinking that the stated MBS of 9.8 kilonewtons is based on testing with a figure 8. That looks pretty likely. Another figure 8 loop. We got a break in the knot on the other side. This is our third figure 8 loop. We got failure on the hydraulic side. This is a reaver loop, and it does not look like it has any sort of backup, but I am not familiar with this knot. Broke on this side. The whole thing just kind of falls apart once it's broken. This one, of course, is very tight. This is the second reaver loop that we are testing. So this is the second time it's broken on this side. Looks super similar to the last test. This is our third reaver loop. Let's break it. Something interesting about this test is all of the samples broke on the dyno side. These are Bohlins, or whatever variation of that has the bitter end inside of the loop. Rope got cut in the knot, but it appeared that the tail was creeping through the knot. Second bowline sample. Very interested to see what happens here. This is the variation of the bowline with the bitter end inside the loop. We've got a failure in the knot. Kind of looked like it was slipping, but this doesn't look much shorter. This is our third bowline. I have moved this tape so it's right next to the knot, and I'm curious if that will show us how much this moves. Looking pretty similar to all the other ones. Broke on the static side. We have now moved on to bends. This is a
Right. So I think they're covering most of the knots that you would cover. At least we would be covering with climbing. I mean, a lot of these I've never even heard before, and I think even the testers hadn't heard before when they got them from this the supplier that sent it to them. But you can see some of these really want to try to untie themselves, and so it's kind of fascinating to see the migration of the rope through the knot until it gets so tight that it basically then just fails upon itself. So, but I was also, I think that these strands of Perlon are not real heavy, thick strands. They almost look like maybe 7 or 8 mil. And so that's where kind of the numbers are getting sort of low. When I was watching another video earlier today, they were testing some of the slings and things like that. And some of the kilonewtons were up in the 23, 25 to even 2,700, which is like, like 12,000 pounds or something like that. It was incredible amount of weight that they were being able to handle. And the bigger diameter of rope is going to be able to handle more. And I think even the knots can handle even more. These smaller diameters start cutting into themselves a little bit easier and breaking and stuff. But I wanted to cover a couple of those knots, and you can kind of see, under a lot of force, kind of what the knot is doing, especially in these slow motion. You're not going to see that out on the rock or anything. Any other thoughts? Any other ideas on that? On any of the videos or any of that stuff?
There's some terminology I don't know if you've covered before. So from context, I kind of understood what you and Travis were talking about, but you guys use the term bite. And I know you're differentiating between a closed loop and a rope that you can feed through something, but I was wondering if you could kind of go more into what exactly that means when you're describing something that's for a bite.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Let me see if I can go back. So like the figure 8 on a bite, we talked about that. It's basically when you take a loop over, and I think it was even in one of the videos where because when you're going climbing, traditional climbing, you got one climber at one end of the rope and you got the other climber at the other end of the rope. And if you're going to use the rope for any tying in or anything like that, you're not going to untie the ends. So you have to tie off your knots using a chunk in the middle. So you just kind of grab a chunk of it, which is going to have a natural loop, and you're basically tying that loop into a knot, which is basically tying that bite into a knot. And this would be an example. If you're looking at these two ends, loose ends, one of them is going to go to one climber and the other end is going to go to the other climber. And so you don't have really the ends to work with. So you're just going to have to take a bite out of the middle, and that's what you're going to tie into. Now, ironically, I was watching a video before we met up, and they were doing some testing on this, on the figure 8, but not pulling it straight through. They were taking the loop here and spreading that in different directions and seeing what that was doing to the knot. And you get obviously quite a different results from that. It wants to really unwind itself. And so that's when you have like a backup side to it and things like that. But it was kind of fascinating. And I might try and put that into maybe our video just to add it to this for next week. I'll just kind of get some little results from that and stuff. It's kind of cool. So next week, we're going to start talking about the protection pieces, whether it's stoppers, cams, all different types of protection pieces, even some fixed pieces like bolts, and how to use them and that sort of thing. And now I'll see if I can pull up some information on, testing of those things too. Because it's, you can have your rope as strong as you want, but if your pieces pop out of the rock, then that's the rope and knots really don't even come into play much. So, but so that's kind of what I've got for this week to everybody. Anything else going on? Sydney and I are still trying to get out to the weather when on the nice days where it seems like we're working, and then on the days it's raining or snowy or whatever, we have off. And so Sydney and I are trying to get up to Toll House to just scout out and maybe try to put together a climbing day for all of us. And I think he was also he's been in contact with Charles too to help us get some gear, some mutual gear, maybe through the shop that we can kind of use, maybe some harnesses, things like that, so that we can get some people out and do little chunks and spend some time out in the outdoors, get out a little bit. So that should be a lot of fun. Anything else, you guys? Anything else going on? Anybody got any fun stuff going on this week?
If we get the snow that's expected Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Travis and I will probably go snowshoe or cross country ski up in Kings Canyon if anybody wants to join. I
know. It's like I kind of gave up on all that. I'm like, okay, we're not going to get any snow. Now we move on to rock climbing. I'm ready. I'm all in rock climbing mode, but now the weather is saying, nah, not so fast, which is great. I mean, we need it. And, ultimately that's maybe going to kick in and help us with when we get into our kayaking and rafting stuff. So I guess we got to look forward to that too. But yeah, if you can get out and get some snowshoes going or get some skis going. I know Liam, you're kind of chomping at it to get your skis back on. And yeah, I wish I could schedule my stuff around the weather a little bit better, but anyway, we'll I have a feeling that our warm weather and sunny days are going to be here before we know it. So, but yeah, that's about all I got this week, guys. Thanks again. I always appreciate everybody that's able to show up. And Marianne, thank you for listening in. I hope you got some stuff out of that. And yeah, I'd love to get even more. I know it was an awkward day for everybody. Sam and I were talking about that just with the time change and everything. It's like, but I appreciate the extra effort to get in. So, but hey, we'll do this again next week. And until then, you guys, you're very welcome, Marianne. And yeah, until then, hey, have a great week, and let's just stay on top of it and have fun.
Right on.
Thank
Thank you, Dave.
All right,
everybody.
you got it. Take care, everybody. We'll catch everybody next week.